Should you ask those Americans to pay to banks money that they didn't obligate themselves to? The answer is no. No to more government spending.
Who seeks
Madam
recognition?
Speaker,
The gentleman from
strike the last word.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Please leave the picture up. Yes, we ought to look to the children. Last Sunday on 60 Minutes was a report about our children in America today. 25% of our children in America today are hungry, and many of them are homeless because their parents have lost their homes. 42 families. Yes, this program hasn't yet kicked into its full potential. 42 families are in their homes today, and those children are not out on the street homeless. Listen to America. Listen to the 25% of children in America today that are hungry, and a large percentage of them are homeless. Listen to their cry. Listen to them. Yes, we have an obligation as good citizens of this nation to see to it that our neighborhoods, even if they are the high-end neighborhoods in Alabama, that those problems are addressed. 10 months ago, the new majority took this floors and they said, listen to Americans that want jobs. Not one job bill has passed this House. The only bill that's passed this House that dealt with jobs was H.R. 1, the continuing resolution that destroyed 700,000 jobs and will put more of those children homeless, will destroy more families. Yes, we ought to be listening to the generations ahead of us. But if we do not listen to today's problems, those problems in the future will only be worse. And $8 billion, yes, that's a lot of money. But it happens to be 8% of what we spend every year in the Afghan war. Get our priorities straight here on this floor. You bet I'm worried about the children of today. The 25% of Americans' children that are hungry, and a large percentage of them are homeless because their parents have been unable to meet the mortgage commitments. This program is one of 4 that are going to be terminated by the Republican majority. So what is it that you are offering those children? The children of today. What is it that you're offering them? The opportunity to be homeless, that's what you're offering. Come to this floor and talk to me about tomorrow's generation. Yes, do that. And that's my concern also. But I'm concerned about those that are homeless and hungry today. So don't eliminate this program. Make it work. Don't eliminate the other 3 programs that are an effort to try to keep people in their homes so that they don't go homeless. Madam Speaker, I know my colleagues on the Republican side care about the children of America, today's children, and why they would put 4 bills forward this week and next week that eliminate the opportunity for those parents to stay in their home, I do not understand. We need compassion. We need to be aware of the deficit. We need to make choices. And if our choice is to force more families to be homeless, that's the wrong choice. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
I rise to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I rise because I want to make sure that the chair of our committee, who just took the floor, understands that we understand the bill. When our chairman first took the floor to talk about what this bill is and what it is not, he said he did not think that we really understood what the bill was all about. I would like to assure you that the members on this side of the aisle understand this legislation. I'd like to assure you that those of us who work on the Financial Services Committee, who put these bills into operation, who organized these bills, who presented these bills, who got these bills passed into law to help homeowners understand what is now happening to them. We understand that the bill before us would eliminate this program. This is an FHA program that's designed to provide refinance opportunities for those homes that are underwater. What do we mean when we say underwater? We mean that when middle-class homeowners, hard-working citizens, went and signed for that mortgage where they were paying $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 for a home, they signed that mortgage. That was supposed to be the value of that home. That's what it was assessed at the time. That was what it is supposed to be worth. And now, because of this crisis that we're in, this subprime meltdown that we're in, this economic difficulty, these homes have lost their value. They're no longer the homes that they signed that mortgage for. The value has changed. That $400,000 home, that $300,000 home that middle-class citizens were buying is now 35% less or 50% less in some areas. And so
Would the
these
gentlelady
homeowners
yield?
are saying, no, I will not yield. These homeowners are saying, will you please help me? Will you please do something about the fact that I'm working every day paying a mortgage amount for a home that's 35 to 50% less than what I signed up for? Will my government please help me? This is not fair. And they're simply saying, can't you do something? And we said yes. We put into play legislation, FHA, that would help to refinance these homes. And let's get the amounts right. Now, let me yield to the gentleman because I don't want to deny my friend the opportunity to have his say.
Would the gentlelady tell the members, when you write that check to help them with their underwater home, that check goes to Bank of America. That check goes to Citibank. That check goes to, just fill in the bank, fill in the mortgage company. It goes to whoever loaned the money. It doesn't go to the homeowner. Are they benefited? Yes. And tell the members of this body who pays for that check.
Reclaiming my time.
We do.
Reclaiming my
American
time.
people.
Reclaiming my time. I'm focused on the homeowner who was supposed to be protected by the regulators that have been appointed and given the jobs of regulation so that they can make sure that our consumers are being treated fairly. We failed them. We let them down. We allowed them to get into mortgages where fraud was quite evident. We did not do the job, and so now they have these homes that are underwater. And they're saying, help us, and we did. And that's what this FHA legislation would have done, help the refinance so that they could lower their mortgage payments. And now my friends on the opposite side of the aisle are saying to the taxpayers and to the homeowners, no, we're not going to help you. We know your home is underwater. We know this information. We know what the services have done to you. We know that you're working every day to pay a mortgage for a home that you thought was worth an amount that is no longer so. And so we're saying, please don't do that. We're saying, please don't do that. Don't strip the homeowners of this opportunity to refinance this home. In addition to stripping the homeowners of this opportunity, the other programs that you're going to hear about, the other 3 programs, the HEMP program, the NSP program, the program for homeowners who have lost their jobs, who simply want a loan, we're saying no to all of this. We're saying no, homeowners, we're not going to help you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Who seeks recognition? For what purpose does the gentlelady from California rise?
An amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate.
Amendment number 6, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Ms. Waters of California.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam
For
Chair.
what,
and I-
excuse me, for what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama rise?
To
Gentlelady-
claim the time in opposition, although I may not be in opposition.
Gentlelady from California.
First, I would ask unanimous consent that Amendment number 5 be modified with the modification that's at the desk.
The clerk will report the modification.
Modification to Amendment number 6, offered by Ms. Waters of California. Strike all after the section heading and insert the following. Not later than 5 days after the date of enactment of this Act, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development shall publish to its website on the World Wide Web in a prominent location, large point font and boldface type, the following statement. The FHA Short Refinance Program, which was intended to provide borrowers with refinance opportunities, has been terminated. If you are having trouble paying your mortgage and need help contacting your lender or servicer for purposes of negotiating or acquiring a loan modification, please contact your member of Congress to assist you in contacting your lender or servicer for the purpose of negotiating or acquiring a loan modification.
Is there objection to the unanimous consent request for modification to the amendment?
There's no objection.
Without objection, so ordered. Gentlelady from California.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, this amendment that I've worked on with my colleagues on the opposite side of the aisle is simply about transparency. It's simply about making ourselves available to the homeowners who are trying to get some help because they are underwater. This amendment would simply say that the program is no longer in existence and that you may call us to help you to get to your lender or to get to your servicer in some way. It is certainly not what I would prefer to have to do, but I understand we're going to lose, and the members on the opposite side of the aisle have made up their minds, and they have decided that this is important and this is what they're going to do. So I would simply like our citizens to know that this program that they may have started to hear about is no longer in existence, and if they call us, we will agree that we can try and help them in some modest way with helping them to get to their servicer or their lender. So I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady from California yields back the balance of her time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama rise?
To strike the last word.
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Let me say this. I would prefer that this amendment notify all Americans, particularly taxpayers, that we're stopping a program that authorizes $8 billion worth of spending. But I do, having said that, I think this is a good amendment. I know there may be members who say, well, I don't want to be contacted, but I will tell you this. Our office, people do call us from time to time, and they say, I'm having trouble with paying my mortgage. I'm facing foreclosure, and I can't get in touch with my lender or my servicer, or I'm not sure who I should talk to. And we put them in communication many times with the servicer or the lender. We actually go further and actually help some of them with their applications. On 18 occasions, we have helped this last year. We've helped citizens with applications to lenders for a modification. I think it's a good service, particularly with the recession we have now. And I think it is a far, far better approach than a government program using taxpayer dollars, because we're contacting the lender or the servicer, and that is who ought to talk to the borrower. that's who has or could have an obligation or has an interest in working it out. Because it almost in every occasion with the mortgage, it isn't in the interest of the borrower and the lender to work it out. I will yield.
Thank you so much. First of all, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you for your cooperation on this amendment. And I know that there are some other kinds of words or other words that you would perhaps use to explain to the homeowner or the citizen from your point of view, but you did work with me on this, and you thought that this kind of transparency was good. And I do commend you, because I know that you have worked directly with some of your constituents, and we found that out as we talked with you, the fact that you had helped 18 with loan modifications, and you are willing to contact the services. And as you know, there are those who tell us that we shouldn't be doing any of this, but I think you and I agree that we should offer some assistance to the homeowners who contact us, and I would like to thank you for that.
Thank you. And let me say this in closing, if I continue to have time. I do want to caution the members that it's not an obligation of the Congress or members of Congress, and I think Ms. Waters would agree, to intervene and to suggest to the lender that they do anything other than give due consideration. And we simply put them into communication. Now, we will help them with the applications, but I think it's important that we don't, in all our dealings, that we do not try to intervene in legal obligations and in any way appear to coerce or influence that outcome. So, but this, I think, is a very good amendment, and I would encourage the members. There are also VA programs, FHA programs, that we can put lenders in touch, borrowers in touch with. This I believe is an amendment I will support. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment as modified, offered by the gentlelady from California. Those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
On that, I would request a recorded vote.
Gentlelady has requested a recorded vote. And pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment as modified, offered by the gentlelady from California, will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in the Congressional Record on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment number 3 by Mr. Lynch of Massachusetts. Amendment number 6 by Ms. Waters of California as modified. The chair will reduce to 5 minutes the time for any electronic vote after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on Amendment number 3, printed in the Congressional Record by the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 3, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Lynch of Massachusetts.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
First roll call votes of the day in the House, a series of 4 votes, beginning with a couple of amendments to this FHA mortgage refinancing bill. After that, we expect to vote a procedural motion vote, a motion to recommit, and then a vote on final passage is expected. The first vote, 15 minutes. A short time ago, I spoke with a reporter who's been covering these bills on Capitol Hill. Alan Zibel is with Dow Jones Newswire's Wall Street Journal. Why are House Republicans determined to get rid of a number of mortgage assistance and housing-related programs?
Well, it's basically the whole argument that you've been hearing about the deficit. I mean, they believe that these programs, even though they haven't spent a whole lot of money, should be eliminated just to save taxpayers any money that can be saved at this point.
Now, on the FHA bill, how much money is expected to save taxpayers, according to supporters of the measure?
Well, the CBO estimate is really the one that people should be looking at because that's the independent analysis, and they estimate the taxpayers would be saving about $175 million over the next 10 years if the program were terminated.
Where did Democrats stand on this measure?
Democrats oppose it. They believe that the program should be continued. They know that it's just getting started, and it has the potential to save some people their homes if they owe more on their properties than their homes are worth.
What can you tell us about the bill that's coming up tomorrow in the House?
That's another bill that's going to that's targeted at another program designed to lend money to unemployed homeowners and keep them in their homes. That's a $1 billion bill that was inserted last year into the Dodd-Frank financial reform.
Will these bills pass the House this week?
They are likely to pass the House this week, and they are unlikely to be taken up by the Senate.
Now, you wrote earlier this week about President Obama issuing a veto threat on these bills. What did the administration say in its statement?
The administration is opposed to repealing all of these foreclosure prevention efforts as Republicans want to do. They believe that the measures are necessary to help right the economy, and if the bills ever got sent to President Obama, he would veto them.
Now, looking ahead again to the Senate, you said that they're not likely to be approved there. Why is that?
Democrats generally support these programs, even though they've fallen far short of expectations. They think they should still be given a chance to do what they can to help as many borrowers as possible.
Alan Zibel reports for Dow Jones Newswire's Wall Street Journal. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
And right now, amendment vote on the FHA refinance program. We expect a vote on a procedural motion, a motion to recommit, and vote on final passage. This first vote is 15 minutes. The underlying bill, the FHA program bill, offers low-interest government loans to people who are underwater on their mortgages, meaning that they owe more money to the bank than the home is worth. Lawmakers again claiming that ending this program will save about $175 million over 10 years. President Obama has threatened to veto the bill. Earlier today, House Speaker John Boehner announced his plans to take up energy legislation in response to rising gas prices within the next several months. He was joined at a news conference today by other Republican leaders, including Energy Committee Chair Fred Upton and Natural Resources Committee Chair Doc Hastings. Speaker Boehner also took questions on federal budget talks with the Senate. This briefing took place in the U.S. Capitol.
Morning, everyone. Rising gas prices are a major burden for American families and small businesses. As gas prices go up, the cost of everyday life goes up. It costs more to drive to work, costs more to buy groceries, or just to get the kids to school. And at a time when our economy is already in a position where it's not creating enough jobs, rising gas prices hurt the very people that we need to lead us out of our economic crisis, and that's small businesses. Just as with jobs, the American people recognize that Washington has been a big part of the problem when it comes to the price of energy. The Obama administration has consistently blocked American energy production that would lower costs and create jobs in our country. They've canceled new leases for exploration, jeopardized our nuclear energy industry, and imposed a de facto moratorium on future drilling in our country. They've even pushed a cap-and-trade national energy tax that the President himself admitted that would cause the price of energy to skyrocket. Well, the average price for a gallon of gas is on its way to $4 quickly. And if the White House has its way, the EPA is about to impose a backdoor national energy tax, which means that gas prices would only go higher. Republicans have a plan to lower gas prices and to create new jobs. And in the coming weeks and months, we'll be taking action on that plan. We're calling it the American Energy Initiative. And the American Energy Initiative is rooted in our pledge to America. In the pledge, we said we would help end some of the uncertainty facing small businesses so they can begin hiring again. And we said we will fight to increase access to domestic energy sources and oppose attempts to impose a national cap-and-trade energy tax. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Under the American Energy Initiative, we'll work to stop government policies that are driving up the price of gasoline, expand American energy production to lower cost and to create jobs, and promote our all-of-the-above strategy to increase all forms of American energy. We'll also work with governors and state officials to identify ways we can help them increase energy production and to create jobs in their states. Now, these are common-sense policies that the American people support. And the American Energy Initiative will be a sustained, ongoing effort by House Republicans in the weeks and months ahead. Our committees are fully engaged. Americans don't want some knee-jerk reaction. What they want are real solutions to increase the amount of domestic energy that we produce. And through this initiative, we will work to lower gas prices, reduce our dependence on foreign oil, and to create new jobs. We made a pledge to America, and we intend to keep it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Fred Upton from Michigan. We have seen in the last 2 years since President Obama was elected, gas prices have gone up double. And the first gas price bill that we have now passed out of subcommittee, I just left the Energy and Power Subcommittee, we passed by voice H.R. 910, and it blocks the EPA from driving fuel prices even higher. We are not going to let this administration regulate what they've been unable to legislate, and this bill, H.R. 910, is the first step. We intend to mark that bill up in full committee next week. We want to apply the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. The idea that this administration or some want to focus on SPRO, Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which has the volume of only 770 million barrels, is really not the right answer. Our focus should be on the 50 billion barrels of oil that have been put off limits. As part of the Speaker's efforts, what he just said now, we want to streamline the permitting process. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Shell, off the coast of Alaska, has spent $3.5 billion over the last couple of years trying to drill some test wells into an area off the shore of Alaska where they think that there could be as many as 25 billion barrels of oil. And yet their efforts have been stopped up to date so far. The Keystone Pipeline, which will provide access to Canada, to the oil sands there, coming down into the Midwest, being able to tap the 4 million barrels a day of oil that are being produced out of oil sands in Canada, need to come here to the lower 48. And I look forward to working with our committee, with Doc Hastings' committee, to see what we can do to streamline the permitting process to, in fact, increase the supply so that we can put downward pressure on those prices that are impacting every business, farm, and household across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm Doc Hastings. I'm the chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee. And the focus of our committee is to utilize the tremendous resources we have on federal lands. Federal lands were designed to be multiple-use lands, and that includes commercial activity. We have tremendous known resources under our jurisdiction on federal lands, on the Outer Continental Shelf, and certainly in Alaska. In fact, the known reserves that we have are in excess of 160 billion barrels. Unfortunately, this administration, since they have taken charge, have honestly gone in 180 degrees away from utilizing these resources. For example, right after President Obama was elected and Secretary Salazar was appointed as the Interior Secretary, they canceled active leases in the Intermountain West and exploratory leases in the Intermountain West. And as a result of what happened with the BP spill, there is now, in fact, a de facto moratorium on Gulf drilling. And meanwhile, gasoline prices go higher and higher. So we are going to focus. In fact, we have 4 hearings this month alone, and we'll have a field hearing in the Gulf of Mexico to make sure that we can, in the long run, have these resources for our use. And I really believe this debate, as we move forward on this debate regarding utilizing our resources, becomes a national security issue. We have seen today, in the last month or so, the sharp spike in the price of gasoline because of the unrest. Here we are sitting on all these resources. It seems to me in the best interest of our country to utilize these resources not only for jobs, the economy, but also for national security issues. So I'm looking forward to working with others and Fred to make sure that we can make our country less dependent on foreign sources for the things that make our economy run and create jobs here. Thank you.
Principally due to the policies of President Obama and the 2 previous Democratic Congresses, the American people have witnessed the longest recession and most tepid economic recovery in the post-war era. This Congress, this House, is about creating jobs. It's why, under the leadership of Speaker Boehner, we passed H.R. 1 to put America on a fiscally sustainable path, because historic levels of debt lead to historic levels of taxation, which in turn lead to historic levels of unemployment. It's also why we took steps to get rid of the dreaded 1099 form that would crush small business job creation. This is a House that is dedicated to empowering small businesses to create more W-4s, not force them to fill out more 1099s. Businesses face a great environment of uncertainty. Compounding that uncertainty is energy prices. We know that we have had an administration and 2 previous Democratic Congresses that have been anti-carbon-based energy, which means they are anti-energy, which has the impact of being anti-business and anti-family. Small businesses, all job creators in America, do not need greater uncertainty to keep their capital on the sidelines. Struggling American families do not deserve higher prices at the pump. And so Republican members of the House embrace the beginning of this American Energy Initiative. American businesses and American families need affordable American energy.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, when you mentioned that this is going to be a focus in the weeks and months ahead, when can we expect to see energy legislation on the floor of the House? And secondly, both Chairman Hastings and Chairman Upton have said in the past that it's their preference not to do a single sweeping comprehensive energy bill, but rather pieces. So can you comment on the timeline and the structure?
Well, I'll let the chairman comment on the timeline, but you know, the days of big comprehensive bills, I think, should be over, and I would rather deal with this in what I'll call bite-sized chunks. Why wouldn't we have a bill to encourage vehicles to use natural gas and do it by itself? Why wouldn't we have a bill that would encourage more oil and gas exploration, where the royalties would go to support more green energy development? And why wouldn't we do that by itself? Why wouldn't we do a nuclear energy bill, as an example, by itself? I think it's a more logical and thoughtful way to deal with these issues. And when it comes to timing, I'll turn it over to Chairman.
Well, we've begun hearings, lots of discussions. As you know, we've sent lots of letters seeking information. I agree with what Speaker Boehner just said. I know that for the first time in a long time, we're intending to have all the NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commissioners, come testify before our committee. We want to find out why it takes so long to go from start to finish on a new nuclear reactor. Why does it take us 10 to 12 years and it takes the French and the Japanese 4 to 5 years? We want to see what we can do to change that. And by lowering the number of years, we can lower the cost. We want to talk about nuclear recycling. We're going to look at specific legislation on that. We're going to look at a number of things to streamline the process and, again, use bite-sized chunks. We're looking for bipartisanship on a lot of these different issues, and I look forward to working with the leadership to get these bills out of our committee and to the House floor so we can begin to do something about increasing the supply so we can look long-term at decreasing the cost.
I just want to say that we are going to focus on what we think is the most immediate solution to this issue, and that is a de facto moratorium on the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to have hearings in a full committee this month, and we're going to have a field hearing on that, and there are several things we can do. For example, there were active leases prior to the moratorium. There's no reason why those leases now should not be executed, and we should commence utilizing those resources. That's just one example of where we're going to be as aggressive, because after all, we get roughly 1/3 of our crude from the Gulf of Mexico. It's an active area that we need to utilize and not take off limits. So that's where we're going to focus our area.
Speaker Boehner, the H.R. 1 was just mentioned, and it's being spoken in very glowing terms. Just a quick question here. You rescinded about 123 mandatory appropriations so far through the H.R. 1, yet would you be that serious about defunding health care? Because frankly, there's about $105 billion left in future appropriations in that bill, and it seems like leadership doesn't want to even bother rescinding that particular appropriation.
Listen, we made it pretty clear when we put Obamacare on the floor, and the House passed a repeal of that bill. We're going through regular order, and I would expect that the committees of proper jurisdiction will bring forward bills to eliminate some of the mandatory spending that is involved in that bill.
For Chairman Upton, the White House hasn't exactly been forthcoming with your investigation into the negotiations, the health care negotiations with the trade associations. And I was wondering if you've given any thought to inviting Billy Kozin and the chair and the CEOs of those trade associations up to the Hill to maybe get the information from them.
We received a letter back earlier this week from the White House, and we are preparing a response back, and we'll be glad to share that letter with you. It's something that is not off the table in terms of what we may do. We're looking for more information for the Oversight Subcommittee.
Speaker Boehner, Governor McCain said recently that having these 2-week CRs continuing is harmful to our national security. What would you need from Senate Democrats in the White House to budge from that $61 billion number in cuts? And what do you need for, it looks like we're going to have, as Mr. McCarthy indicated yesterday, another 2 to 3 week temporary CR. How does that need to look for you in order to get your confidence behind it?
It's time for Democrats here in Washington to get serious about these budget negotiations. Listen, we're trying to clean up last year's mess. The Democrats did no budget. They did no appropriation bills. And as a result, they dumped this in our lap. And we're trying to clean it up. The House passed a bill that would cut $100 billion from the President's request for this year. The Senate had a couple of votes yesterday, neither of which received the necessary votes, but they've got to get serious. The American people understand that cutting spending will lead to a better environment for businesses to create jobs.
Could you move from that $61 billion number, though?
So where is the Senate Democrat plan? I'm not going to sit up here and negotiate with myself, and that's what you're asking me to do.
What do you make of the Democrats' proposals they're talking about to widen the conversation here to include revenue raisers, to look at cuts in mandatory spending programs?
They don't seem to be able to understand that the American people want us to cut spending, because they know that cutting spending will, in fact, create a better environment for job creation. To try to muddle the current issue with entitlement programs, tax increases, and that's what the next budget process is for. And we'll have plenty of opportunities to talk about that.
Speaker Baker, and this might do with some of the chairman on the energy issue here. Is it fair to blame the Obama administration for the price of gas here when not 3 years ago your party was taking around bumper stickers that called it the Pelosi premium in 2008 when the price of gas went up do you not bear some of the responsibility in this short time since these prices have spiked? If that was the blame on the Speaker 3 years ago?
I think we did everything that we could to increase the amount of American energy that we produce. And if you watch what this administration has done for the last 2 years in their regulatory process, they've stopped drilling in the Gulf. They've slowed the number of leases that are coming out of the government. They're imposing these EPA regs on American businesses that are going to sharply increase the cost of energy in America. One only has to look at the cap-and-trade bill, the 2,000-page monstrosity that came through here about a year and a half ago. And to look at what kind of cost that would impose on American industry. If we want to create jobs in America, we have to have American people investing in our economy. All of these policies will tend to discourage investment and to move it overseas. And the net result of that will be the question the American people are still asking. Where are the jobs?
On this vote, the yeas are 184 and the nays are 243, and the amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 6, printed in the Congressional Record by the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Waters, as modified, on which further proceedings were postponed, and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 6, printed in the Congressional Record as modified, offered by Ms. Waters of California.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having arisen, the recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
Members, now on the second of 4 votes related to elimination of the FHA mortgage refinancing bill. The Second Amendment, brought by Congresswoman Maxine Waters of California, would require the Housing and Urban Development Department to, within 5 days of bill enactment, to publish on its website a statement that the FHA short refinance program has been terminated, and that, quote, if you're having trouble paying your mortgage and you need help contacting your lender or servicer, please contact your member of Congress for assistance. This is a 5-minute vote. After this, we expect 10 minutes of debate on a procedural motion, a motion to recommit, followed by a vote on final passage. Earlier today, the House Homeland Security Committee held the first in a series of hearings on the issue of radicalization of American Muslims. Committee Chair Peter King of New York gavelled the session to order just after 9:30 this morning under heavy security. It is actually airing once again right now on C-SPAN 3. There were 4 panels throughout the day, including testimony from Minnesota Congressman Keith Ellison, who is one of 2 Muslim members of Congress. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee also testified. She's one of 60 House members who called for those hearings to be canceled. Again, those hearings airing right now on our companion network C-SPAN 3, and you can see it in its entirety tonight right here on C-SPAN starting at 10 Eastern.
On this vote, the yeas are 278 and the nays are 147, and the amendment is agreed to. The question is on the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rule, the committee rises. Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union has been under consideration H.R. 830, and pursuant to House Resolution 150, I report the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union reports the committee has under consideration the bill H.R. 830, and pursuant to Union reports the committee has under consideration the bill H.R. 830, and pursuant to House Resolution 150, reports the bill back to the House with the amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any amendment to the amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the question is on the adoption of the Committee of the Amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. The question is on engrossment in the third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to rescind the unobligated funding for the FHA refinance program and to terminate the program.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
We'd ask members to vacate the will. The House will be in order. Members would please take their conversations from the well. The House will be in order. If members and staff would please take their discussions from the floor. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
I am in its current form.
The House is not in order.
House will be in order. If members will please take their conversations from the floor. The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Deutsch of Florida moves to recommit the bill H.R. 30 to the Committee on Financial Services with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. In Section 3B, before shall continue, insert the following, and any comments made available for use under such program pursuant to subsection D. In Section 3C, after such enactment, insert or pursuant to a commitment to insure made pursuant to amounts made available for use under such program pursuant to subsection D. In Section 3, strike subsection D and insert the following new subsection.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, so ordered. The House will be in order. The gentleman deserves to be heard. The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I present an amendment to this legislation that will help the seniors who built America from the bottom up. This amendment provides us with an opportunity not to stall this bill, but improve it right here and right now. The contribution of the men and women who became known as America's greatest generation should humble us all. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentleman is correct. Gentleman's recognized.
As teenagers, Mr. Speaker, they confronted unspeakable evil and endured incredible sacrifices during World War II. In the aftermath of the Great Depression, their love of country and commitment to hard work created this nation's and the world's most vibrant economy. They were doctors and nurses, teachers and engineers, steel workers and pipe fitters, secretaries and truck drivers. Today, they are seniors who deserve to live their retirement years with dignity and self-sufficiency. Unfortunately, throughout the financial crisis and this devastating recession, seniors have often gone forgotten. For many, their pensions dried up or have come under attack. Their life savings were decimated by recklessness on Wall Street. They have not received a Social Security cost of living increase for 2 years. Finally, Mr. Speaker, their homes, often their last standing pillar of equity and economic security, have lost their value through no fault of their own. The community of South Florida I am so privileged to represent is home to one of our nation's largest populations of retirees, but it is also ground zero for the foreclosure crisis. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The gentleman is correct. The gentleman may continue.
In 2010, Mr. Speaker, South Florida outpaced the nation for new foreclosure filings. The counties of Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade have suffered the majority of these foreclosures in Florida, and my office fields calls from struggling homeowners every day. Statewide in Florida, nearly 1 million families and seniors have lost their homes since 2009. Today, nearly half of all Florida homeowners are underwater. Underwater on their mortgages, they owe banks more money than their homes are worth. Through no fault of their own, thousands of seniors who built this nation face the tragedy of losing their homes. Now, America's greatest generation has never been one to ask for handouts, and today is no exception. What we have the opportunity to do here today is to give our seniors a chance to rearrange their deals with their lenders, make their payments, and keep their homes. The mortgage program abolished by the bill needs to be fixed. So let's start by fixing it for seniors, as my proposal will do. Before us is a real opportunity to amend these programs for the future. It will not send this legislation back to committee. It will not stall this bill. It will simply preserve these mortgage modification programs for seniors and open the door to improving these initiatives. According to leading economists, high foreclosure rates in our struggling housing sector remain the biggest challenge to our economic recovery. In Florida, with unemployment at 12%, the real estate industry is so integral to our economy, we must stem foreclosures in order to grow the private sector and create jobs. We can begin stabilizing the housing market today and do right by Americans who made this country great for every one of us in this chamber. Seniors answer the call of Uncle Sam every week of their working lives, paying taxes for America's schools, roads, military, and health care. When asked to serve, these Americans always said yes. Now, when these same men and women are asking for a modest amount of time to renegotiate in good faith, to prevent foreclosure, to remain self-sufficient as retirees, what answer will this body give them? Every day, it seems, mortgage lenders have their day in Washington. Every day, Wall Street executives have their day in Washington. Every day, Mr. Speaker, banks have their day in Washington. Isn't it time to give the seniors who made America great their day in our nation's capital? Let's make today a day for the people who rebuilt this country after the Great Depression, who started the businesses, small and large, so important to our economy, the people who are our parents and our children's grandparents, who served our nation, who made America what it is today, the people who taught us what it means to be Americans. They're not asking for credit or recognition or attention, but we owe it to them to honor their lifetimes of hard work and responsibility and decency by making it possible for them to live out their lives with four walls and a roof over their head. Vote yes on this amendment.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama rise?
Mr. Speaker, in opposition to the motion to recommit.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this is simply a procedural measure to stop this legislation which cuts yet again another wasteful government program. This program has already allocated $50 million, and it's only helped 42 American families. Do that math. It authorizes $8 billion. That's at a time when this country has a record deficit for this year, and yet they don't get the message, my Democratic colleagues. They simply do not realize that this money goes to the lenders. This goes to the banks. That's who the checks are made out to. And who pays for it? The taxpayers. And ultimately, this is who pays for it. Our children and our grandchildren. Because we can't pay it back. Because we borrow 42 cents out of every dollar. And let me tell you, a lot of them have grandparents. When you talk about seniors, let's talk about our children and our grandchildren. Let's talk about that we're endangering their future. I yield the balance of my time to Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Chairman Baucus.